Okay, so Greg Gutfeld and a bunch of other Fox News hosts on the show The Five, which I actually thought was no longer on air, but I guess it's just been flying under the radar recently, or they just brought it back. But either way, some of the other Fox News hosts include one of the douchiest of them all, Jesse Waters, and they go on this huge diatribe and slam Elizabeth Warren for her sense of urgency about climate change and how big of an issue it really is facing not just the country, but the entire planet. So here is this Fox News panel led by Greg Gutfeld, and then I'll be back for more.
Just days before the 75th anniversary of D-Day, Liz Warren said climate change is a bigger threat than whatever happened back then.
America's faced huge challenges before. World War II, put a man on the moon. This environmental catastrophe bearing down on us may be the biggest challenge yet.
Bigger than World War II. Imagine if she had been president on D-Day. Hey, let's call it off. The seahorses might die. She'd put the whole thing on hold until they fixed the emissions in the Sherman tanks. So climate change is worse than Hitler? Could be, since just the thought makes me fume. So after getting hammered for appropriating Native Americanism, Liz now wants to be AOC. As the other Democrats realize that blaming Trump for everything in good times is essentially crediting him for the good times. So now it's back to climate doom. But if they believe we will destroy Earth if we don't act drastically, shouldn't they be disabling planes, trains, and automobiles instead of using them? What hypocrites! And what broken records! Apocalyptic thinking has been around forever. The world was supposed to end on a million yesterdays, yet the left keeps resurrecting that one thought. We're all going to die. But it raises a huge question. If the left can't come up with a way to solve terror, crime, or homelessness, why should we listen to them about a problem that's the size of the Earth? There were 144,000 arrests on the southern border last month. You don't want to solve that little problem? Then I'd shut up about the Earth. You're in over your head. But issues are always hampered by hysteria, especially when it's delivered like a chant from a doomsday cult. Climate change may be an existential threat, but only to the sanity of Democrats. You know, Kennedy, the Democrats could have solved immigration in a lunch hour, but couldn't. But I guess climate change is easier.
Well, it's easier because all you have to do is take a bunch of money from people,
right,
and then appropriate. It's just another redistribution scheme. But the interesting thing about Elizabeth Warren is she only has one way of taking money from rich people. There's only one mechanism for doing that.
Yes.
Yet it's almost like a badly run Ponzi scheme, because she's taking that money from the rich people, but she's promising it to about 5 different programs,
right,
with no new revenue stream. So there's one central revenue stream, but she's going to use that to pay for college and pay for universal pre-K and pay for all sorts of child care up to the age of 5. And she's going to just sock it to rich people one time and also have a $5 trillion climate change plan that picks winners and losers that will magically somehow not be corrupt at all with a brand new bureaucracy.
You know, Jesse, I have a theory. Would you like to hear it?
Please.
All right. I think the Democrats are pretty good at identifying problems, but it's the Republicans that have to solve them. So when you don't have the Republicans there, you end up with homelessness in L.A. County. So you can say, oh, my God, the Dems are going, there's homelessness, but you aren't including the people that can actually solve the problems, which is the private sector. You know.
I would say the Democrats create the problems, blame the Republicans, and then say, elect me, and I'll fix the problem that I created. I have another theory.
Yes.
The Green New Deal is just a sales pitch for socialism. If you put green in front of something, it sounds better. Like, you know, green travel, green lifestyle,
green Hornet,
green government, green Gutfeld.
Yes.
Automatically, it makes you seem healthier, more sophisticated and modern and better. But what it really is...
Green jeans.
Right. It's just an excuse for them to tax more and spend more. And what they do is they want a complete takeover of the economy and your life, and then they justify it by saying, oh, we're going to save the world doing it. But what really is happening is, like you said, a total redistribution. What are they going to do? They're going to take $1 trillion and then they're going to pick some donor who owns a wind farm and give him $5 million. Then the biggest algae firm in her home state of Massachusetts, they get a couple $1 million. And then they, you know, give a contract to this solar panel company, and they re-outfit the entire Department of Justice. It's like Solyndra on steroids. It's green graft is what it really is. And so Elizabeth Warren gets up there. All she's done in her whole life, she's flipped one house for a small profit and wrote a fake Indian cookbook. And you're going to put her in charge of a $19 trillion economy? company. She's not Warren Buffett.
Yeah. Good
You
point.
know,
Ooh,
graft
Elizabeth
does
Warren
not sound
Buffett,
better.
though.
Elizabeth Warren
Green
Buffett.
graft.
I think graft does not sound better with the word green in front of it.
A
It
little
might be
bit
the only
better.
word. Might be the only word that does
You know,
it.
I have another theory. Should I posit it to you or Juan?
One.
All right, Juan. So Biden is getting hammered for plagiarizing parts of his Green Deal. I think it was a great strategy because he got people to actually read it. Like you had to compare the passages. So in effect, the media read it twice.
That's a good point. You know what I think, though? To me, it's incredible, but you said it right. Republicans just don't register on this. They don't seem to want to acknowledge that there's any problem. So
But they should.
What about
they
Matt
don't.
Gaetz? I mean, Matt Gaetz has a similar
No.
plan to AOC's that
Well,
just
here's the
requires
thing. When you look at the
less
numbers,
government
not
thievery.
Matt Gaetz, but anybody. Here, I looked at the numbers. It said like 77% of Democrats are strongly concerned about climate change. But 52% of Republicans are skeptical that there's a problem.
That's about right for America.
But here's the thing. Guess what? The top priority for Democratic voters, health care. Number 2, far behind, but still number 2.
The economy?
No, climate change. Guess what? And especially.
So you're saying
millennials.
Democrats are deluded?
Guess what?
No, younger Democrats, the millennials, think it's the number 1 issue.
That is true.
That's number 1.
Okay,
That's
but
because they're
here's-
least knowledgeable on other issues.
No, I don't think so.
but
I
that's-
think
never
that's
listen to
where
millennials.
this
I think
issue-
these are people who think
Right.
this is going to impact me in my lifetime, and I don't like it. So you get Joe
So be more
Biden,
positive about
Elizabeth
it.
Warren.
Stop being all doomsday about
It's
it.
gonna get
no, you
Dan-
got it.
I gotta get
you
Dana
gotta
into
say
this.
Jay Inslee's number 1 issue, Beto O'Rourke,
right.
even John
No,
Delaney.
Beto.
You know, Dana, the problem is the rhetoric becomes white noise,
Yes.
right?
Okay, so Bjorn Lomborg,
Yes.
excuse me, who's a wonderful climate scientist, and he's
Right.
done all this research. So it was just last week in the Wall Street Journal that he wrote another piece about overblown rhetoric about climate change actually
Hurts
the problem because they go too far. The other thing is, it was interesting, we just learned this week, is that so Germany had climate targets, right? Carbon reduction targets. They're not meeting them. Do you know why?
Why?
They closed their nuclear plant.
Right.
So they can't meet their energy needs and reduce their carbon emissions because they made bad policy decisions on something that was actually greener. And also, I think Americans are pretty smart enough to realize we can do a lot here. We should innovate. We should do all these things. We do more nuclear. We could carbon capture, all of those things. But if the rest of the world isn't doing it as well, it won't have a net effect.
That is so true.
But then we have to set the example, right?
But we do with nuclear.
But not by tanking
Gen
our
4,
economy.
everybody.
We already are.
Look it
I
up.
agree with you there. Innovation,
Already
private
are.
innovation is one thing. Government force is another. That will tank our economy, and it doesn't do anything about China.
France is doing pretty good with nuclear, and
Yes,
Germany's
they do
going to
very
start
good.
making. Okay, we got to move on. I get it.
So yeah, that was pretty bad, wasn't it? So that was about as ridiculous of a segment I've seen on Fox News in quite a while now, just based on the fact that everything they're saying is either projection, wrong, or a bending of the truth. And the fact that they do it in such a cocky, mocking Elizabeth Warren type of way where they're so smug about it, it's just unbearable to even watch. But they're a propaganda outlet, so that's what they do. They lie, they bend the truth, they misrepresent facts, and they make unsubstantiated claims because all they're trying to do is convince their audience of their point and hope that their audience doesn't ever go and research what they're saying or go to another news outlet to get their information. Or maybe they're just so stuck on Team Republican that they take that information, and even if they watch CNN, they'll stay staunch in their stance that Fox News told me this, and this is the Republican tagline, and I'm going to keep repeating this until the day I die. So that's what they want. And they're trying to achieve this by mocking Elizabeth Warren and Democrats for making a big deal out of something that is clearly a big deal, and that scientists all basically have a consensus at this point that it is a big deal and is going to continually get worse, and it's a gigantic crisis for the entire planet. So here's some facts for you really quickly. 97% of climate scientists agree that climate warming trends over the past century are extremely likely due to human activities, and a majority of the leading scientific organizations have issued public statements supporting that position. Scientific evidence for warming of the climate system is unequivocal, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The expected effects of climate change, according to the IPCC and the World Bank, are very bleak. These organizations suggest that the planet's climate will change rapidly enough to cause widespread droughts and famines, the spread of insect-borne diseases, the worsening of severe poverty, and displacement of populations. Plenty of climate scientists feel that the expectations from the IPCC regarding the effects of climate change are too optimistic, which would mean an even bleaker reality in the future. So that's what we're looking at right now. Those are some of the facts of the situation from scientists that spend years studying this issue and doing all of these scientific models to predict the future of what the outcomes are going to be of what's happening right now in terms of climate change. So the fact that they're mocking it and acting like, oh, the Democrats and Elizabeth Warren are acting like the sky is falling and they're crying wolf, and all they're trying to do is just scare people into voting Democrat in 2020, because if they don't, the world's going to end. But seriously, the world is going to be in a far worse state in not just the coming years, but in the coming decades, and has no foreseeable end to it at all if we don't address climate change in a significant way very soon. So the fact that they mock it as something that's some non-issue that the Democrats are trying to scare you about is just BS. And what that is projection. Because Jesse Waters was the one that was saying that it's basically a Democratic scare tactic, and they're just trying to say, you got to vote for us or else the world's going to end. But what he's completely missing is that people like Elizabeth Warren are looking at scientific reports that are saying, listen, this is going to severely impact millions, if not billions of people across the entire planet. And it is going to have severe weather, sea level rising, flooding, famines, droughts, severe heat waves, more of a spread of disease, displaced populations, increased poverty, and more extreme effects on the people who already are impoverished. So you have all of these things, and they're looking at it, and they're like, that is a gigantic deal. The amount of people it's going to affect, even indirectly, and the amount of people that are going to have to suffer or be relocated or migrate somewhere else because of these issues. It is not a small issue. And they see that, and they repeat that to the masses. They say to people at their speeches that, listen, this is how big of a deal it is, and if we don't act soon, we're going to be in a world of hurt because of it. And that's why you need to vote for somebody that's a Democrat that will take extreme action against something that is an extreme threat. So, even Joe Biden and middle ground on the climate policy, obviously he didn't end up going through with that, and he ended up plagiarizing a bunch of other people's climate plans. But, which, that plagiarized climate plan that he put out was way better than what a lot of people were expecting from him. But that's, I think, because he got eviscerated when he said he was going to look for a middle ground on climate. Because there is no middle ground. We have to act, and we have to be urgent about it. But they make that out to be just a scare tactic. And you know why that is? It's because they're propagandists on Fox News and for the Republican Party. And all the Republican Party and Fox News does is use scare tactics to get people to go out and vote. Like they did in 2018 when the midterms were coming. All of a sudden the migrant caravan was coming and the military was going down to the border and Fox News was covering it nonstop. And it was one of the biggest national stories for weeks, the migrant caravan. And in the moment the midterms were over, it was kind of like, all right, that's over. We're not really covering all this caravan stuff anymore. And the military kind of just quietly ended up getting pulled away from the border. And it was all over. So that's pure projection on his part. And then another point from Greg Gutfeld there about why would you vote for Democrats when they can't even address terror? First off, what metric are you saying that Democrats can't address terror? Do you have any fact to back that up at all? And what metric do you have that Republicans are better at addressing terror when Republicans are always, and even, like I said, there are plenty of corporate Democrats that are in support of these regime change wars too, but always, almost all of the Republicans are in favor of them that are in Congress. Obviously, there are some libertarian Republicans in real life that don't want these regime change wars at all. And I think even a majority of Republicans that are just normal voters don't want these wars. But in terms of Republican politicians and what Fox News supports, they support these regime change wars where they're ruining people's countries. And that is the best breeding ground to create more and more terrorists. So even if you just follow the logic of it, he doesn't make any sense with that point. And then equate it to that somehow that'll mean that there will be inaction on climate change. Again, makes zero sense. And he has no statistics or facts at all to back that up. So that's just a random unsubstantiated claim. And that girl that's super, super annoying that sits on the end, I never remember her name, but she's unbearable with how smug she is about everything that she says on the show. She said it picks winners and losers, and you just got to let it go by the free market and let them figure it out. We're past that. We can't let the free market figure it out because we don't have time for the free market to just naturally come around to saying, all right, we have to just have zero carbon emissions by a certain year. We have to set mandates for them and make sure we set a framework for these goals to be met. So that way we have a unified effort to address the issue. If we just go by the free market, then you don't know what the goalposts are for certain companies. You don't know when they're going to act. You can't urge them to act. We don't have time for that. It's a serious issue. And first off, the people on the left aren't free market ideologues anyway. So you're not going to convince us that all of a sudden you have to let the free market do its magical voodoo to be able to get something like a Green New Deal going. Because we need action, and we need to have goals, and we need to have a framework to achieve those goals. And we're not going to be doing that through the free market. And it's hypocritical to even say that anyway, because her defense of the free market, are you dumb? Because first off, right now, the US government gives $26 billion a year in fossil fuel subsidies to the oil and gas industry, to companies like ExxonMobil. Is that picking winners and losers? Is that letting the free market do its work? Of course it's not. So it's just another hypocritical, idiotic statement from a Five host there. And outside of that, I mean, it's just frustrating to watch. And the fact that Greg Gutfeld makes that other point too, that because the Democrats didn't do well on terror, with no facts to back that up, then he says, well, why would you even trust them to address this then? Why would you vote for them to even think that they could make an impact? Even if I thought the Democrats were useless and they could barely even make an impact on that, which some of them are, like people like Joe Manchin is borderline useless. But if you told me, you know what, the Democrats are borderline useless, but they may even just like the slightest percentage be able to get something through for climate change, or you can vote for the Republicans and they literally just don't believe in it, and Donald Trump thinks that it's a hoax that China created, and there's going to be literally zero action, and we're going to continue fossil fuel subsidies and trying to prop up the coal industry, I would be like, yeah, I'm still going to vote for the Democrats even on that 1% chance. But if you vote for the right person for the Democrats in 2020, somebody like Liz Warren, somebody like Bernie Sanders, they're not idiots, and they're not some kind of pushover where they're not going to try and actually fight for this issue. So it's a much higher percentage than that extreme example that I just put together of them only having a 1% chance to pass anything through. So it really comes down to, would you rather the side that says it's a hoax and is literally against taking action on it and wants to negatively affect that issue? Or do you want to go for the side that, even if you don't have a ton of faith in the Democratic establishment, that certain candidates and certain new candidates that will be voted in 2020 could really make a difference and could fight for something that could really help save and improve millions of people's lives if we get this action through? So I think it's a clear-cut choice. I don't even think that's a question. And I think anybody on the left or even in the middle sees that and says, yeah, I would much rather vote for the person that will take action on this issue, because it's that important. And the fact that the fact that Fox News hosts come on to the Five and mock Elizabeth Warren for talking about how important of an issue this is and offer no solutions, offer no good insight, offer no facts, and just put out unsubstantiated claim after unsubstantiated claim, and just continue to lie and exaggerate and make hypocritical statements, then it's going to continually be an uphill battle to actually get this action across the line. So you have to call it out anytime you see it. That's why I made this video. And we have to continue to stress the importance of climate change and the need for action not just in our country, but globally.